All right, all right. Here we go. Episode 20 of Hitting the Road. Excited about today's episode. It's a little bit of a twist. We've got founder of Tour Collective and tour management made easy. Riley Vasquez. Riley has worked with artists like Switchfoot, Echo Smith, Ben Rector, Stephen Curtis Chapman, and many more. How you doing, Riley, man?
Hey, I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on the Big 2-0.
Big two. It's a like I said, it's a good round number, man. Like this is the kind of number you're just like, man, are we doing it or not? Like, is this a thing or not? I mean, we're
Yeah.
kind of like, I think we've got a little bit of momentum, man. So I'm happy to have you on, dude, because it's like I said to you before we just jumped on, man. I think you bring a unique perspective as someone that really has been in the tour management world for really most, if not all, of your career, like you mentioned. And I think that it's very niche, but I think it's something that's it's very needed, obviously, in the music industry. When I was thinking about it, man, I kind of like almost liken it to and back when I had hair, you go to a barber, you go to whatever, you go to Ulta, whatever it is, and man, I don't know about you, but I used to just like tell the person cutting my hair just about anything. I told them everything. I told them about the girl I was
Right.
dating. I told them
Right.
about problems I had with my parents. I mean, they just knew everything. And like as a tour manager, man, I can only imagine the stories you've got from things that you never expected you would probably hear or experience.
Oh yeah. Yeah, as a tour manager, you're the therapist, you're the travel agent, you're the parent, you're the conflict resolution person.
Sure.
You're really, I mean, you're really all those. Sometimes you're the financial manager. Like it's just so many hats you wear.
Yeah, totally, man. Well, I mean, like I said, it's unique, but I mean, it's not just as easy for anybody listening. It's like, what does a tour manager do? And you just named some of those responsibilities, right? But I think a
Mhm.
lot of times people think it's just as easy as getting in the van and driving to a gig, and that's what a tour manager does. They just kind of take you to Alabama and back, and
Yeah.
it's so much more than that, right? But man, so you went to college, you went to MTSU, yeah,
Yeah.
and so what was your field of study? Like, what was your degree in?
Yeah, so I went 2 years to the only school I ever applied to, actually in East Tennessee. It's called Lee University. It was
Okay.
where my grandparents met there. My mom and her sister went there, so it was like a legacy school. I had heard about it growing up my whole life. I knew I kind of wanted to do something in this space, didn't really know what. And I got there and I just realized, okay, this place is not for me. I think I actually really want to dive into the audio part. Um, so I started researching schools and found out about MTSU. I had no idea what MTSU was. And honestly, I got on campus and I was really thrown because it was pretty ugly. Like the landscaping was terrible.
Right.
It was the middle of summer, so it was all dry and brown. And
Punchy.
but then I walked into the studios and I realized, oh, okay, this is where they put their money. This is awesome. And going to school there was so great, so helpful. They have a great program that really teaches music business as a whole, but specifically audio production was really great for me.
Okay. And so before you even got to MTSU, I mean, how did you decide you wanted to go into audio production? Was that something you knew beforehand? Is it something that wasn't until you got there that you were like, hey, I'm going to try my hand at this? Like where did you kind of land on that?
Yeah, I was a musician my whole life. I grew up, my family owned and still owns music stores down in Macon, Georgia.
Okay.
And, it's where the Allman Brothers are from, Little Richard.
Yeah.
And, it's a music town from the 70s. But my grandpa started this music store. And so I just grew up around music. And I was a musician, but I also really loved the behind the scenes. So,
Right.
making it sound great and, working in my local church. I started to take a liking to the sound. And anyways, at Lee University, I traveled with a choir for as a 96 person choir. We would do events every weekend, and so we traveled on two, Greyhound style tour buses. They weren't the luxury tour buses yet.
Yeah,
So, but
totally.
we would go around and do events every weekend, and I did sound for those, and that's really where I started to get my feet wet and like actually doing shows rather
Yeah.
than just like a church event.
Sure. Well, and I'll let you give, your alma mater kind of a little bit of a shout out because a lot of times, man, kids are coming to the Nashville area and MTSU obviously not, we wouldn't consider it Nashville proper, right? But it's like,
Right.
but everybody's like, hey, let's get them to Belmont if we can. Like, I'm gonna let you, kind of speak up for your school, man. Like, I mean, and not that you can compare it apples to apples, but would you say, hey, listen, man, I feel like going to MTSU, getting, the degree that I had to get, like, I mean, did you feel like it was on par with maybe some of your contemporaries, maybe at Belmont or maybe some of the other schools that are in Nashville proper?
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you don't know when you go to school. You
Yeah.
just kind of are trying to figure out the dream, figure out what the dream is
Yeah.
and what it could be, what a job could look like. But Belmont was our biggest rival. And the funny thing is Belmont had no idea we existed.
Yeah.
But there was this level of like, okay, we have to be better than these people who go to school on Music Row.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the very first day at MTSU, they kind of break you down a little bit and say you're not going to be the next big producer, you are
Wow.
not going to be on the next big tour, you are a nobody, and the only way to get there is meeting people around you and working hard. And I
Yeah.
thought that was really great. Looking back, my first day in class, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be really hard.
Yeah.
But they make you take like algebra classes. It's a kind of it's a difficult program to get into. You have to like work really hard to get into it, and then it's really fun.
Yeah.
But because of that, because they have that level of work ethic, I think it's a great program, and a lot of folks who I meet in the live space, so live audio, really live audio and video,
Yeah.
anywhere in that space, folks from MTSU just are freaking good at what they do,
Yeah.
and yeah, and so hope somebody from MTSU hears this. That's repping
Yeah.
hard.
Well, and the thing is, and man, yeah, great shout out to your university, man. But it's so I did a couple things back in the day with, I don't know if you know who Nathan Chapman is. He
Yeah.
produced,
Hmm.
he produced
Taylor
Taylor
Swift.
Swift a little bit, and he's and just super great guy. So, but he's an MTSU grad, and he was like, man, he was all about, he's all about his alma mater. But so yeah, so I say all that to say that like it was kind of, that's what formed you. It helped you kind of just like work through and navigate, what would eventually become what you're doing now, right? So
Mhm.
I guess you kick college, you're done, what, 2011, something like that.
Yeah, long time
And
ago.
so you're like, hey, let me ask you this. When did you feel like I'm going to try to latch on and do the tour management thing? Was it just like, hey, college ends and this just is something I knew about, somebody brought to me? Like how did you
Mhm.
find your first tour to latch on to?
Yeah, so honestly, tour management part kind of fell in my lap a little bit. The audio engineer, knew I wanted to go out and mix shows. Like, so I found a band, some guys starting a band around. One of them lived in Murfreesboro, the others lived in Franklin, and they now call themselves Colony House. They just
Yeah,
played Pilgrimage, headlined a stage at Pilgrimage, which was
great.
awesome. And they asked me to go on the road with them to a small show for like 40 people in Atlanta.
Okay.
I was working at Cracker Barrel at the time, and uh, they told me they could pay me $50. That's all they could pay me. And
Okay.
so, I asked for the day off at Cracker Barrel, found a replacement for my shift, and the manager told me, sorry, you can't leave. You're too new. You can't take the day off. And so I just told her I quit.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I quit my job for $50.
Yep.
And honestly, that put me on a path because what it did was it let me go to Atlanta. That was the time where like Instagram was just coming out, but I kept telling people, yeah, I went and did a show. And at that time, like our community of people was all students. No one did that. So the fact that you are getting paid to go out on the road and do a show, like word travels fast. And then the one of the managers who was interested in Colony House at the time, he heard that I went out on the road, and he had another tour manager slash sound engineer, who, just backing up, like a TM slash front of house.
Mhm.
That's the Swiss Army knife of touring.
Yeah.
That's the role that every artist is going to hire first. So the tour manager wearing one hat,
Mhm.
or two people wearing the same, one person wearing two hats.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Gotcha.
the tour manager and sound engineer, TM slash FOH. So he asked me if I could go out and do TM slash FOH, and I knew what FOH was. I knew that meant front of house engineer, but I didn't know what TM meant. So I was
Okay.
on Wikipedia. It's before Chat
Yeah.
GPT where you could just ask what a tour manager is. But
Sure. Yeah.
started looking it up. Went to a textbook, and it said it's the guy who settles the show, books transportation, sometimes drives the van. I was like, okay, I can do this. So I just responded back to the email, hey, yeah, I totally will come out. And they picked me up in a van and a trailer a couple days later. And so that was really my start of just saying yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I had said no, I have no idea where my life would be right now. It's like
Sure.
just saying yes in that moment. But that's kind of how it fell in my lap. And then over the years, mixed a ton of shows, Red Rocks, arenas, all over the place. I love mixing. I love
Yeah,
audio. Um, but I also really love the business side of music, and I love the people, that kind of the just the relationship side, and a lot of that is dealt with through the tour manager,
sure.
especially on the artist side. And so I kind of started leaning to the tour management side, um, and started just taking roles that were only tour management roles rather than a technical role.
Yeah,
And that's kind of how I've built my business. Tour Collective is more on that tour management side, event management, staffing, crew, that kind of
sure.
stuff. And so,
Sure. Well, and if, you know, so and just to kind of frame it up too, I mean, so the guys, a couple of guys from Colony House, you know, their father, multi, you know, just mega everything Christian music star, you know, Stephen Curtis Chapman, right?
mhm.
And so you've worked with Stephen, you know, like SC squared, I guess nerds would call him, but
Yeah.
you've worked with him a little bit. I mean, but I guess you know, did that come from that relationship working with Colony House first, or was that something you had to kind of hustle and work towards on your own, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I've only been out with Steven one time, and it was a long
Okay.
time ago.
Okay.
There have been offers, but it was also like, I work for your kids. It's also kind of hard. Don't
Yeah.
want to maybe do both, but
Sure.
great, great, great people, salt of
Yeah.
the earth humans. But I would say that they had all worked with their dad,
Yeah.
and their dad demanded. I mean, he was selling out arenas, and so he demanded a level of workmanship when they came out on the road, and so they learned a hard work ethic from their dad being on the
Sure.
road. And so kind of jumping in and starting to work with them, like they would hit the ground and work really hard, which also helped me up my level to work hard. Yeah, but great working with those guys and their dad. Yeah, he is a absolute legend.
Sure. No, absolutely. Well, and something, man, that because I want to go back to a little bit too is, you know, you mentioned that you're pretty, you know, open about it, you know, on your website, things like this. But, you know, in your early days tour managing, apparently you made a pretty decent misstep that cost you a gig,
Mm. Hmm.
that kind of really, cost you a lot of money, and that really kind of made you have to, you know, you challenged yourself at that point, I guess, to up your game. Can you talk about like you kind of losing out on that opportunity and what that was, you know, what that was like?
Yeah, huge opportunity right out of college. I definitely was green. I had done van touring, but I'd never done a level of touring like this. For an artist who was, headlining large stages at major music festivals, and this was with a singer-songwriter based in Nashville, and everything had I had been assigned to be the tour manager and also the monitor engineer, which I'm not a great monitor engineer. I'm a better front of house engineer, but and so that was a little bit of a learning curve there. But um, we showed up at the show in Milwaukee, Summerfest, headlining the Miller Lite stage, I believe it was, and it's a big stage. It's 10,000 people, and a really cool look. And we flew to this show, and we showed up and realized there were no instruments anywhere backstage. I had forgotten to order backline, and
Yeah.
so you can imagine the look on a headlining artist as they're showing up to the stage. There's no gear.
Yeah.
You can imagine the frustration that someone like that felt.
Sure.
Um, and, it was just something that slipped through the cracks, and uh, it could have been like checked off with a checklist.
Mhm.
And so just I remember being in that moment, like being so bummed that I knew I was going to lose my job.
Yeah.
And I had just started the job, so I knew
Sure.
I was going to lose that. And then that job was actually a trial for his entire tour that summer, which was a big amphitheater tour across the U.S., Canada,
Sure.
and um, and so I lost not only a ton of money, I lost a tour, I lost the clout, and I lost a business relationship.
Right. Right.
And since then, I've been asked to go back out with that artist, which is great.
That's
But
awesome.
at the same time, like it's who knows, like that just that one misstep
Yeah.
cost, who knows how much that cost me in my life. And so really after that, I remember always thinking like, how can I be better? How can I be better? What can I do to avoid mistakes? And you're always going to make mistakes, but it's like, what can you do on the front end to be proactive to avoid those things? And that's kind of one of the reasons why I created our tour manager course, Tour Management Made Easy, is to help tour managers like level up before they
Sure.
go out on the road and so they don't make those kind of mistakes.
Sure. And that was going to be kind of my pivot there is, so you, I mean, man, because here's the thing, you lose out on that gig. I mean, were you defeated? Because we're going to work towards, your courses for sure. But it's like, were you defeated in that moment? Did you sit and wallow in it for a second, or did you say, man, I
Oh
gotta,
yeah.
I gotta bounce
Yeah.
back? Like, what did that look like?
I mean, I'm 10 years out of that or more. What year was that? So that would have been 2012. So yeah, we're way past 10 years. But 14 years from that and I still make mistakes and still like struggle and it takes me a little while to get over those hurdles. Less than it did then, but I associate it so much with like who I was, my character and like who I am down deep inside. And honestly, it was just a clerical error
Yeah,
that unfortunately cost me the role. But yeah, dude, it took me a long time to kind of get over that.
sure.
Um, and a lot of work to get my reputation back as someone who can handle a large event, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and because I can tell you, man, I worked as a booking agent for some years, and it's like there was this one time, man, I busted a radius clause pretty good.
Oh yeah.
I put somebody about 60 miles from their next gig, but the thing is it was in Colorado and it was still kind of a two and a half,
Uh-huh.
3 hour drive or whatever. But still, there was a 100-mile radius clause on it and I busted I had to go to my boss and tell him what I'd done. And I was like, man, I've busted this radius clause. And I remember for a while, man, I had this real kind of like hesitation.
Hmm.
Anytime I was putting a date together, I mean, even though I knew my stuff, like I was real hesitant because like I got shook by that situation. And so it's like, man, I think that there are probably people certainly in the music industry that may be listening to this that they've made what they consider to be a monumental mistake. Would you tell them like, hey man, it's not the end of the world? I mean, it's something that you can bounce back from and even thrive later.
Yeah, I have a business coach in Nashville, and the other day I walked in, and something I couldn't have avoided, as a problem that I couldn't have avoided, came up, and I was telling him about it, and he goes, "Dude, you are wearing pity like a wet blanket." He was like, "If you were at a party at my house, I'd tell you to leave."
Yeah,
And he's just so like adamant about like does not matter. This mistake does not matter. Get up, keep
right.
going. And so yeah, that's just there's always gonna I always make this like uh talk about a wave, business and just if you're going for something, you're gonna have setbacks.
Yeah,
Like maybe the only people who don't have setbacks are the people who just like take everything as it comes. But like if you're going after something, there's gonna be moments where you hit that wall or you
absolutely.
you you trip and fall and it's like what do you do? It's like you got to get up, you
Sure.
got to keep going. The world needs you to keep going.
Oh, I love that. That's good. Yeah, that's a good line, man. The world needs you to keep going. That's great, man. No, and so you kept going. You kept going, man. You kept pushing. And over time, what is it, 2019? And you can correct me if I'm wrong. You went ahead and you found Tour Collective. You kind of are putting now all those years of experience now that you're kind of putting it together and you've created, Tour Collective. Can you explain what Tour Collective is? And then really even the offshoot, of now what Tour Collective is.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, just during the time of working with multiple different artists and tour managing, doing production management, maybe even doing a little bit of day-to-day management, I just realized how much of a disconnect there was between crew on this side who are typically like working a few months on this job and then they go a few months on the next job and so they have their own cycle over here. Well, an artist has their own cycle over here. They've got a actual record cycle where it could be 1 to 2 years, and they've got festival season. Maybe they've got a support tour, all that stuff. They're on different timelines, and often they can line up. But what happens when they don't? What happens when they fully miss each other? Where the artist has maybe 3 people, 4 people that they can text for a certain role, and then what do they do?
Yeah.
There was nowhere you could go except for a email list called Bobnet, and so I just kind of was recognizing this in the market and seeing that I was kind of paying attention to tech at the same time and seeing like recruiting firms and ZipRecruiter and stuff like that. And I just started, managers would reach out and I can only be in one place at one time, right?
Yeah.
So if I couldn't be somewhere, I'd say, hey, I can't be here, but I've got a good friend. I'm going to set you up with this person. And so I did this a handful of times. And then once I asked someone, I said, hey, would you mind giving me $20 since I helped place this person? And they're like, yeah,
Yeah,
sure. I'll Venmo you 20 bucks. No problem. The next time I placed someone on a tour, got them partnered in the manager, I asked the manager, hey, would you mind sending me 100 bucks on Venmo just for the time? And
sure.
they actually pushed back pretty hard, and they were not a fan. They did not want to pay me 100 bucks, but I kind of rebutted with like, this is going to save you a long time. You didn't have to go find this person. This person's going to be on your tour for a while. I think it's worth 100 bucks, don't you? And they finally agreed to it and sent me 100 bucks. And so when I got that 100 bucks, that second payment, I was like, I think maybe this could be a business. And that was at the very beginning of 2019. And so I started thinking of what this business could be. Would it be recruiting? Would it be tech? Um, I started asking managers, would they post a job on the internet? And every one of them told me no.
Um,
So I started thinking, okay, well, maybe this is more of a behind the scenes recruiting type thing. Um, well, then I saved everything I made in 2019. I said yes to every opportunity, saved everything, and so that I could take all of 2020 off and build a business. And
yeah.
and we know what happened in
Yeah.
2020, right? COVID smashed us. We had a bunch of clients lined up, a bunch of tours, and all those tours kind of went to zero. So we were back at a little bit back at the drawing board, and touring like we knew it at the time was totally changing. The markets were totally changing, and so during that time, that's when I just started focusing on like what have I learned over the past few years that I could teach someone, and that's where we created the tour management made easy.
So, okay, and I'm going to go ahead. I know I've mentioned this to you before, but so your websites, man, the way you communicate, your vision, your mission, your language, your copy, all these things, man. I mean, it's so clear, and you and I've talked about it before. So I'm just going to say, shout out to Donald Miller, real quick, if I
Oh,
may. I mean, but listen, I say that as a compliment to you, but it's like I can see it, but it's so clear in
mhm.
what someone is getting, right? When they're trying to come to your website and they're trying to find out, a little bit more about how you can coach them or what you can do for them. And so, before we kind of get into the coaching, man, I downloaded this morning, you may or may not have seen this, but I downloaded the 8 keys to becoming a successful tour manager. This is a free PDF that Riley can give you. Not an issue whatsoever. But man, there are different things that you've shared in that. An appetizer, if you will, to kind of get people's get them, their taste buds kind of going a little bit. But you kind of mentioned some things that you've seen, and like one thing that you mentioned is really the importance of being a great communicator. That's one of the things that you talk about, and like you mentioned conflict as well, and conflict doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Am I hitting those notes right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
you're
so
totally.
so so conflict doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Can you give me some examples? And again, for maybe a tour manager or a prospective tour manager that's listening, like what is in your world? What does conflict look like? And can you give me really what the bad is, and maybe
Mhm.
what the hey, this wasn't so terrible after all.
Yeah, I would say that first of all, there's certain people who like conflict and are okay, very okay with addressing conflict,
Right.
very like head on. There are other people like myself who I don't hate conflict, but I just don't run to conflict. That's not in my nature. So
Right.
I've been trying to be better at that, but uh, conflict is necessary for you to build a great team.
Yeah.
And conflict, and I kind of learned this from the Five Dysfunctions of a Team, the book Five Dysfunctions of a Team, Patrick Lencioni. And he talks about like if there's no conflict and there's no accountability, you actually can't build a great team. So if you've got accountability and you have a job that you're responsible for, your teammates have jobs that they're responsible for, and say you're leading this team, if
Yeah.
they're not doing their job, well, it's going to be a problem for the whole team. The result, you're not going to find the best result if everybody's not doing their job. So you as the leader have to engage in conflict with the team member who's not doing their job. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So, for instance, we had a tour where we were it was one of the first tours back from COVID. And, we could have gotten anyone to sign up for this tour because everyone was so hungry for work, right? Well, we had a person on this tour who was oversleeping, They weren't making it to load in on time. They were not answering their phone or their radio when being called. And so we had to sit this person down and have some pretty big heart to hearts, um, about their job, and finally they improved. They did better. Now, if we hadn't had that conversation and had just let him do his thing, it would have hurt the whole team. Um, and it would have hurt him in the future because everyone would have known that this person was, terrible at their job. But he finally stepped up and did a great job. But there have been other times where we've had someone who's toxic on the road, and we've talked to him multiple times, trying to keep them accountability for the things they're doing. Um, but maybe they end up never listening, and they still are not doing their job. Well, then you have to let that person go. And even though um, it's going to leave a hole in your team, it actually makes the whole team better. Does that
Yeah,
make sense? So,
absolutely.
and that's some of that conflict that I'm talking about on the road. And it's conflict is never fun, especially when you're living on a metal box with wheels.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, you,
totally.
you got to eat, sleep, breathe with these people, and having conflict is tough, but it is necessary for you to build a great team.
Absolutely. Well, and man, so I have a question, then probably a sub question, but it's like, you mentioned too, the importance of that tour manager being, I want to say that again, maybe I'm using your language, but I wanted to say, a good hang, somebody that's a good hang. What's the difference though, if there is, in your opinion, between being a good hang and a good time?
Mm.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I think a good hang is someone who is uh, who one understands who they are and is self-aware. I think that's what really a good hang means because being self-aware in your environment, not dominating conversation, keeping your space clean, like all that kind of entails
Yeah,
into the good hang. Now, a good time, that could be like your class clown, that could be
yeah,
your person who gets a little tipsy, but that's not super self-aware in my opinion
right,
because
right.
there's always a time for that kind of stuff. There's a time to go drink after a show. There's a time to go party with your crew, but when you're at the venue, um, when work still has to be done, that's not the
Yeah.
time. So, uh, yeah, a good time and a good hang. I think that difference is just being self-aware.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and so, I mean, I guess, I mean, that does speak then to like this emotional intelligence probably that comes with being a tour manager because there's such a fine line, right? Like you said, there's such a fine line between kind of like, you because you don't necessarily need to just get in the throes of the chaos sometimes that maybe has nothing to do with your job, if that makes any sense. But I guess my question to you would be this, man, and I didn't see this question like coming, but I guess my curiosity is, what if you are a tour manager and you're out and about with a band, and let's just say that maybe their values, who they are, just like, ethically, morally,
Mhm.
you find out that like they just don't align with the artist or they don't, like what encouragement would you give a tour manager that maybe they've signed up for, like you said, a long tour or something like that, and
Mhm.
they realize, man, I don't know, man, like this is it's asking me to compromise, or
Mhm.
it's kind of coming at me and asking more of me than I want to give morally, maybe ethically. Like how would you encourage that person if that's the case?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a line, um, you know, an ethical line. Like for me as a tour manager, I'm not going to buy drugs for my artists. Like that's something I've always said. But there are plenty of people who will, and there are plenty of people who do drugs on the road.
Sure.
And just there's so many different types of music out there as well, and those require different types of folks to be around. But there have been plenty of artists I've worked with where we don't line up politically, we don't line
Sure.
up morally, we don't line up on all these things, but that doesn't mean that I can't, one, do a job that's really well, do
Right,
my
right,
job really well, and be a great person on the road.
right.
Um, say you work with a team who goes to strip clubs every night. Well, if you're someone who's married and you're more conservative, that's probably going to be a problem for you, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can just let that not be a problem. You can just say, no, I'm not going there,
Sure, sure.
And anyways, there's plenty of room for you to be able to still work and do a great job. But I think one, it's boundaries. Two is just, having those lines you don't cross. And three, once again, it's knowing who you are,
Sure.
and are you going to be proud of yourself at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah, totally. And have you ever, and again, have you ever seen anybody like that that's had, that's been a tour manager, whatever, that they do cross that line, they start getting sloppy in their work, they start getting, just and they lose the gig. And they thought, hey, I was just kind of being part of the team here, but it ended up impacting their work and their job and they lose that gig.
Right. Yeah, whether or not you know, if you're a tour manager, you get put in a role like that, you are a leader and
Yeah.
you have to lead. And even if say you're super young, you're green coming in, if you're asked to be a tour manager, that's because there's something about you that says that you can be a leader and you have to assume the position in a way. And so, there's moments where I probably haven't led the best that I should have led, but um there are I think there are just some unspoken um, pressures that go with
Yeah.
being in that role, and you have to answer those. You have to do a good job, or you get let go.
Yeah, totally. Well, man, you're obviously a wealth of knowledge, man. And so tell me, tell me a little bit about, tour management made easy. Tell me about, the coaching. Tell me about the course that people go through to kind of sharpen themselves. Like, tell me all about what you got going on.
Yeah. So we have a course called Tour Management Made Easy. Like you said, it's the longest URL of all time.
You're
You
gonna
will,
do.
you probably will misspell it putting it in the internet. No, but it really just kind of helps people who are one want to be tour managers. Helps them kind of level up quickly. When I was coming up, one of the reasons why I think that I failed out of that large role was because I had zero resources, not
Yeah,
one resource. I had a couple people that I could say like were like distant mentors, but I really didn't have anybody who is speaking into me. There were no resources. There weren't any books to read. There wasn't even a course in school in a music business curriculum. Um, and so I just created some resources to help folks kind of level up. And right now it's about 8 hours of,
yeah,
of training. You can go through and it takes you through the life of a tour manager chronologically from the moment you get offered a job to the moment you lay your head on the pillow after your
yeah,
first show. And
yeah,
it takes you through every step in between from making a contract, like how to do that, how to figure out how much money you're going to make before you leave your house, how to budget for the artist, what it feels like advancing or talking to different venues, um, what a day of show looks like, and how to kind of plan that stuff. And then also we talk about the settlement side and the financial side of reading through an artist's deal, making sure they're making the amount of money that they should be making, and just kind of we give a high level overview of everything, but we really give you some great starting points.
sure.
And what's fun is some folks just went to a show the other day. Honestly, it's the best sounding show I've been to in a while. It's a band called the Marias,
Okay.
and they're like a Latin pop band. Really cool. Anyways, the tour manager came up through our course, and we ended up putting her out on a couple tours, a couple different roles. But now she is tour managing this giant North American tour. I mean, all over the U.S., Mexico, and South America.
Wow.
Um, she's tour managing this thing. So she came up through the course, went got placed on the road. We worked together a little bit. She actually worked in Tour Collective for a second, and then yeah, now she's just crushing it. And so it's a
Wow.
great success story showing that this method of bringing someone in, raising them
Sure.
up, and then it's just awesome to see what she's been able to accomplish. And I'd love to see that for way more people.
Yeah. So you're kind of making these, these tour management disciples, man, as you go. You're kind of making these, so it's like I guess my curiosity, because when they get the course, they get one-on-one time with you. And what does that focused one-on-one time, with you look like when they purchase the course?
Yeah, so really, we first of all, ideally, like we want them to have already watched it, but really, it's useful when they have an opportunity coming up and they want to level up quickly, and then we kind of go through everything that they've got to accomplish in their job, all their deliverables, what their schedule looks like, and we really help them craft a great process to be able to get on the road and start operating at 100% on day one, no matter how much experience they have.
Sure. Sure. No, that's great. And so I guess my curiosity too, kind of moving forward for you, are you running Tour Collective full time only, or are you yourself still running tours? Like, are you like what are you up to, yourself?
Yeah, so I've been transitioning over the past 2 years or so to really just running this business. I made the break from a full-time job that I took. That I was working with a promoter where we were running tours, arena level, theater level, all over. And I stepped away from that role last April or last May, and so now we've been about a year and a half running Tour Collective full time, and business is like a organism, it's always changing, always growing. It's a wild ride, but it's really what I enjoy, and I do love being on the road. I still go out from time to time, and we'll do a few shows, especially if we're producing a tour. I'll go
Sure.
out and do a couple shows and then turn it over to a team. Um, and we'll be on the phone with them every day, but really I'm at home in Nashville. That's my home base.
Yeah, totally, totally. Well, and so when you mentioned like, you're still out, you're doing this just about full time, right? But you're still running. Like, are you doing arena tours? Are you doing kind of like, maybe places there locally, or do you like to stay close to home base, or do you mind every now and again going out?
Yeah, I don't mind going out if I can make it work and if
Yeah,
it's worth my time. If it's just someone asking me to go mix one show here, that's probably not the right fit. What would be a great fit is if we are taking an artist's whole crew and we're building the whole team, and maybe we go out just to help facilitate, make sure it's happening, or we go to rehearsals, make sure the front of house engineer who we've staffed is actually mixing the show right.
yeah,
Make sure it sounds good. We're going to do that next Monday. We're going to rehearsals to make sure a tour sounds good. Um, and then, like I said, when we produce tours, we've been producing tours for authors and influencers, and we'll build their entire team and handle all of their touring. So it's like tour management, but without a band. So it's really like a speaker tour, which is
sure.
very different, but they're still selling out theaters. So you have all these all the same scenarios, just not a band.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, it sounds like you've got your hands in a lot, man. And I wanted to just like thank you again for jumping on and just letting us see a little bit more of the tour management side, because it is super niche, but it's super important, I think, to the music industry and what you guys are doing. If you want to check Riley out, you can check him out on his website, RileyVasquez.com. You can also check out tourmanagementmadeeasy.com, like he said, the longest maybe URL in history. But then also you can check out tourcollective.co if you're interested a little bit more as well. Riley Vasquez, man, you've been awesome, dude. Thank you for letting us into your world a little bit, man.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me. It's I always love sending folks your way to get vans.
Well, man, we appreciate it. Well, dude, have a great rest of the week, and we'll catch up with you soon.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, bud. All right, man.